Hello, episode 34 of the Two Russells podcast, coming hot off the heels of a wonderful conversation with Matt Giggs, and such a difficult conversation. Russell, how do all these people cope with the setbacks? We're going to hear,
a bit more of that.
Life-changing situations that I just cannot get my head around.
I know. And we're going to hear a bit more of that with our next special guest. I don't know, but the fascinating thing is that we talk a lot about failure and how it doesn't define you, and how having failures in your career, your commercial life actually leads to success. It's kind of part of that journey. Yeah. I think actually perhaps when it comes to personal trauma, maybe the same is true. I mean, not that it should inspire you. I don't mean it like that, but that it's not. It's literally not the end of you, if you know what I mean. Either you cope with it and you almost use it, I think, as Matt Giggs did. I mean, Matt Giggs said that losing his brother changed his life.
Some inner superpower. It seems very strange.
It was a catalyst, right? And I think that although these subjects are very difficult, we're going to explore that again in a second. I think there's some inspiration to come from it. I hope that people watching, and this is the feedback that Russ and I both get, that the stories we talk about, where we delve into people and their journeys and their challenges and how they come out the other side, it touches and affects other people that are watching this, where they think, well, actually, maybe I can lift myself up. Maybe I can start a business. Maybe I can go for that promotion. Yeah. Maybe this isn't, for me, terminal, despite what's happened in my life.
It definitely helps. It definitely helps you, but it definitely helps me think, I haven't got too many things to worry about. There's a
perspective.
A big perspective. So let's get on to today's guest. So Serge Cowan, international real estate
advisor.
I was going to go for expert, but you went for advisor.
Yes.
So you don't say agent.
There is a reason.
You don't say agent?
Yeah, well, there's universal disdain towards agents, isn't there?
Well, in terms of perception.
Yeah. And I think, ultimately my job is to advise.
Yeah.
You would use a financial advisor, a recruitment specialist, to help guide you through the process.
Recruitment advisor now.
Yeah.
So it takes the edge off it a little bit.
Well, it also, you need someone to advise you on probably what is going to be one of the biggest assets of your life.
Yeah.
Buying a global property, super prime home.
And you certainly deal with some big assets.
I do.
I think you might be the only person that's been on, although we've had the EXP hierarchy on, who obviously are from the US, and they run a global business. I think you're the only person we've had on so far that truly can be described as a global agent in his own right. So you sell stuff in the UK, but you're also selling stuff in what countries?
I call myself the global real estate advisor. I think I've sold in 27 locations around the world.
Right.
I don't know anyone else who's done that.
And have you got a top 2 or 3 countries that you exist in?
Yeah, I mean, I anywhere that I would classify as a second home, I suppose. So you've got places like Spain, so the Costa del Sol, Marbella, and all around there. You've got Ibiza, Mallorca, French Alps, Tuscany, Sardinia, Algarve. I mean, you name it.
Dubai
I've
now
sold
as well,
them. Yeah, not so much. I will talk about Dubai a bit later, maybe when we get to time. I've got my own opinion on it, but I think I have taken clients to Dubai, but I haven't actually sold a property there.
Okay.
It's a very different market. Every market has its nuance.
And you're high end.
I'm high end, yeah.
So what below which won't you take a listing?
I don't get out of bed for less than 2.5 million.
Okay. Euros, whatever. 2.5.
2.5 million, yeah. I mean, ultimately it does depend on the property. So, some people say to me, super prime equals 10 million plus in the UK, possibly, I would say. For me, super prime in, say, Southern Cyprus is the market I started in. I would say at the, around 2.5 probably is super prime out there. Yeah. So I think it varies from location to location.
Yeah. That's a good place to start. So from TV, which was your early career, and your own podcast I know you've had as well, and to selling homes in Southern Cyprus. So talk us through the beginning of your journey.
Well, I always wanted to be a journalist. Very much, always wanted to be creative. Always liked the sound of my own voice. So I was always very much...
Are you describing me here?
Yeah, no.
That's why we get on.
I was a very much a radio journalist, but I started like with the Sporting Life. So my uncle worked for the Sporting Life, which was the newspaper. The old traditional hacks, they wouldn't get up on it, until Friday morning. Wouldn't come out the pub until a Friday morning to write their piece for the Sunday newspaper, basically. And that was pretty much the sort of experiences I had. So I spent a lot of time in the gantries and the
did you
press
train
boxes.
as a journalist?
I trained as a journalist. I studied broadcasting journalism at Nottingham Trent back in I graduated in 1998, and I went from basically. I've said this before. I was working for Capital Gold Sport as a runner almost, and my job was to sort of just do a lot of editing and work with Rob Watson, Steve Wilson, Jonathan Pearce, and Adrian Durham, and people like that, and who are now gone that way. But I realized very early on that I wasn't going to make it, because I went out and interviewed, or was told to go and interview Arsene Wenger just as he got his job at Arsenal. And I went to the London Colney training ground, and I literally froze. And I went back.
You didn't know what to say to him?
Didn't know what to say to him. He was very intimidating, very tall.
Did this happen live or?
No. We used to take our old packs with us and the mics, and I had to go back to the studio without any interview.
Wow. And did you tell the truth?
Oh, yeah, I had to. I mean, where's the interview?
Tape didn't record.
Yeah, come on, pull it all out.
I think that's the problem. I've always been too honest. I didn't realise, But
so how was that received by the editor?
It wasn't great. Yeah. It wasn't great, and I knew,
such a big name.
Yeah, it was at the time. Well, he wasn't. Everyone didn't know who he was. It was just his name related to Arsenal Football Club, Arsene. So it was, But I always, I wanted to do something, and then I ended up at Sky Sports because I knew somebody who was at the head of PR there, a guy called Raymond Jaffe, and he gave me a role in PR there. I worked under a guy called Chris Haynes, and I ended up sort of working on some of the biggest sporting guys, like Lennox Lewis at the time.
Wow.
I went to all his sort of chaperoned him to boxing stuff. Ricky Hatton, I helped him get his first suit in Manchester. And yeah, just like launching events like the Ashes on Sky and all those sort of great events. So it was a real experience. But
why did you give all that up?
Because there was no money in it.
Because the top
and Northwest London money talks, right?
Well, I suppose it's a bit like most industries. It's only the top 1, 2, 3% that
really
you
making
see. So in broadcast journalism, the likes of, I don't know, let's name a few, the likes of Julia Hartley Brewer and Mike Graham from Talk that we know. Obviously, big names at GB News, BBC, ITV. The Andrew Neils, Jeremy Paxman's back in the day. Jeremy Clarkson is probably the.
Let's pick up all your TV names you've just.
Well, not that I know them particularly, but it's the top 1%. We see them and we think, well, I'd love to be Jeremy Clarkson earning 10 million quid a year with multiple TV shows, but the odds are 99% against you being a Jeremy Clarkson or a Richard Hammond.
Yeah.
So you had that realization.
Yeah, and I didn't know what I'd be where I am today, but I suppose it's all come full circle because I'm now having the ability to be a journalist to a certain degree while being on social media.
Through your social media?
Through my social media.
Because you've got a big Instagram account, right? And you're very present on it, aren't you? You have a kind of almost a religious approach to regularity of posting.
I started with 200 followers, and they probably about 5 of them my mates.
Right. And how many you got now?
I hit 15,000 today.
Yeah. Well, and is it property related specifically? So you talk about locations and properties themselves?
Inadvertently, I'm still trying to discover exactly my calling. And I think that's a big part of my psyche at the moment. I'm constantly evolving. I think we all are. We're all on a journey, and life events sort of determine which way you head. Yeah. And I've always been a deep thinker. I've always been very open about my therapy, and I've always been very open about the anxiety that we get. In fact, when I speak to every agent, I always ask them, how's your anxiety?
So when you say your therapy, you mean therapy that you've undertaken?
Absolutely.
Does this go back to something that I know happened in your personal life?
It goes back way before that. It goes back to my teenage
Can we talk about
life? Yeah, sure. I started off, I suppose in a way, I had a fear very early on that something bad was going to happen. And that it interprets as anxiety.
What, like
my life was
you mean
good.
catastrophizing?
Yeah,
that's a thing.
Yeah. My life was good.
So catastrophizing that something would happen because life's good.
To you.
Too good. Too good. And I could never quite pin it, find the right thing, what it was. And, then you go through the sort of the whole steps of life. Northwest London is very demanding in terms of you've got to follow a certain route to market, to use a proper.
That's where you grew up. That's where you lived.
Yeah. So,
Well, there's a right way of doing things.
Yeah, you've got to get married. Grandma gives me her engagement ring. We get married quite young, and then you're not going to make enough money in property, in TV and that sort of thing. I'm not going to have you going to report on Rotherham, Wickham on a Saturday afternoon. You're going to have to be here for the family, and you sort of find yourself in that zone where I didn't want to be, and before you know it, you become the sort of the shell of your former self, and I think that's pretty much where I went.
So you took the brave decision and the very self-aware decision to go to therapy to try and work out what that problem was that was giving you negative thoughts.
Yes.
And what was there an outcome? Did you get cured?
You can never get cured. You can manage it.
Learn how to deal with it.
It's coping mechanisms, and I've tried every bit of coping mechanism. I've probably been through more therapists than some have hot dinners. I actually find this a better form of therapy, talking about it.
Good. Because then, if you don't mind me venturing, something catastrophic did happen.
Yeah. I mean, look, it started 10 years before, and this is where I find people rarely don't want to talk about something in life, which is grief. Yeah. And I got married at sort of 24, 25. Can't exactly remember when. Took us 5 years to have a baby. We had a miscarriage and then 5 years to have a baby. And then my eldest daughter, Maddie, was born, and she was born with streptococcal infection, which materializes from labor. Basically, it's an infection that children can pick up, and she had streptococcal, which led to a meningitis infection. So she was born basically blue, floppy, and that led to her cerebral palsy. So that was in 2007. So we had a business me and my ex-wife had a business for 5 years before that. So basically literally from having a perfect pregnancy, things changed literally within a couple of hours.
Yeah.
And it goes from the excitement of knowing you're going to be a parent to not knowing what the future holds. So there was that moment. That was the catastrophe.
So this is when the doctor comes in and delivers the news to you.
It was more like we went up. There's events that happened. Hospitals tend to change storylines. They write things in retrospect.
Right.
And it became quite sort of confusing for us at the time. So when what basically...
Well, because they're worried about a liability.
Yeah. That they don't have to check as standard for streptococcal infection in women. But the fact is you can pay 25 quid to get it checked. So it's a £25 insurance policy.
But you weren't told.
Yeah.
We knew my ex-wife had the infection from tests we did during the pregnancy process, and it wasn't flagged up by the private doctor or even the local they missed letters.
Even though it has a huge consequence.
Absolutely. And what we should have had was a big label on the doctor's notes to say the baby needs antibiotics during the whole labour process and straight after birth, and the whole meningitis thing could have been avoided. But it also what it didn't explain was how she then managed to starve herself of oxygen as well, and that then led to her global cerebral palsy. So she also had damage to her basal ganglia. The meningitis affects the outer cortex of the brain, so it's sort of like scarring on the outer brain, so educational, social skills and that sort of thing. But then the basal ganglia is about movement, and that would suggest an oxygen starvation event. So she basically had 2 bits of damage.
Yeah, but they were separate to each other.
Yeah. So we were then left with a case. We had to wait 3 months, and then we were told that she had cerebral palsy. Basically, the doctor, also called Dr. Cowan, turned around to us and said, your daughter will be confined to a wheelchair for the rest of her life. and that was in Hammersmith Hospital. And that came around the same time my mum was diagnosed with lung cancer. And we then sort of found myself splitting myself between that world and that world. And it was just like living out this hell and then trying to run a business.
Well, from one hell to another.
Yeah. So I was going out to see, my mum ended up in Germany. My dad was trying to fix her.
Right.
She would go out, he'd take her to Germany, and the German doctor in Austria sort of said, there's nothing we can do for her. And she fell seriously ill. So she ended up being in a hospital in Germany, and we couldn't get her home. And I was obviously flying out there to see her while trying to run a business, and then being back home with my, walking back home and having a disabled child, which has its consequences. You end up being the arms and ears and mouth and legs for your child, basically.
Well, also you and your wife being a support for each other.
Yeah. I mean, that didn't even come into the equation. We were so focused on, I became very introvert and very focused on just coping myself, I think. And you just become this sort of a robot.
Do you feel that you're the one that everybody, so your father, your mother, your wife, everybody's looking at you to be the strong one in the room?
Yeah.
And how does that make you feel in terms of that responsibility? When you've got your own grief and your own things to worry about.
Don't have time to think about
I hate to say it, but in those days, I don't think it was relevant. I don't think you just had to be, the word man up.
Yeah.
Was the word that I heard. So sort yourself out, pull yourself together.
Yeah.
All these sort of words which just didn't mean anything to me in the end. It's like, it actually sent me deeper into a depression or deeper.
And that's the podcast you launched, wasn't it? Let's Man Up, was it?
No, we've got a podcast called Men Do Talk, which is, I'll go on to that in a bit because that came later on. But over the 10 years, and my mum died in 2009. So then obviously that hit me, the family dynamic it hit, because my mum's mum was still alive. She was hitting 100. So my dad was out dating.
No.
So it's like, you can imagine, right?
Yeah.
So my mum's mum was sort of analysing who he was dating on this new sort of, crazy world. And it's like,
that became another distraction.
Yeah, it just all of it, and you're sort of trying to balance that, and then you're arguing with schools about Maddie's education and her educational needs, special educational needs, and you're arguing about which school she should go to. So we ended up in court with our local authority because we wanted her to go to a special needs school in Aylesbury called the Pace Centre, which focused on physical before educational. So if you can sort out their posture and their tone and all that sort of thing, that was more important to us than potentially sticking her in a chair and getting her to listen. We wanted more. So we said we wanted to go to the school. The local authorities said no, you're going to go to the school that's 5 minutes from your house, which was cerebral palsy, but it didn't matter what level, it was just cerebral palsy. It was just a label, a stamp. And then we basically won, which was fantastic. A week later, we got a letter in the post saying we're appealing it, local authority.
That's cruel.
Yeah. And they appealed it, and they got a gang of people against us from physiotherapies, and we lost on appeal. Because we couldn't afford
to fight it,
afford it all, and it all came down to the transport. Even though there was another kid in the area which we could have shared a car with. Going to the same school, and in fact, fast forwarding to the year before, before events happened, we went into the school that she ended up at for an assessment, and one of the teachers, when the headmistress walked out, or headmaster I think at the time walked out, she said, "Look, I have to apologise. I didn't want to say what I said in that courtroom, but I was forced to because I was feared for my job." And that's what local authority comes down to. And I know you're a politics fan, but politics at local authority for me they all work from sort of the bottom of the level and they move up the ladder.
Do you know what, Serge? I don't want to get political. I kind of promised him that I won't because I do that in another forum or two. But do you know what? I think politicians, civil servants, local authorities, governments, they've forgotten who they serve. They? They've forgotten that they are there for us. They are there at the behest of the taxpayer to do what's right for us, not to win, what to them is a tiny little battle despite the fact that winning that battle just out of pride and ego has a devastating and hugely compelling effect on the people, the other side of it. Whoever that local authority was, maybe you shouldn't name them because I'll start ranting about them.
Hartsmith.
We could guess.
They should be fucking ashamed of themselves.
Yeah. And it's not just that. I mean, we had a case against the NHS as well, and we were working with a big law firm, and we were told, and I remember this, they told me we had a 40% chance of winning, which was a good balance, a good case against the NHS. Anyway, legal aid was stopped, I think, by the Blair government. And on the back of that, a week later, we received a letter from this legal firm saying, "Oh, we've basically changed our mind.
20%.
We can't afford to fight it anymore." To which I said, "Well, what about this 40% case?" And they were basically, no, forget it. And I even followed it up, a few years ago, and they were like, "Oh no, you would never have won it," and they just completely wash their hands. So it doesn't just happen at local authority; it can also happen with the big dogs and the big wigs in the society.
What business are you trying to run at this time as well?
I forgot about that. Yeah,
no, but and I don't want to just go back to business but
it's important because
what were you trying to run?
You're trying to run a life. You're trying to make a life for your family.
You've got to earn a living,
and I've got two other children by this point as well. Come 2012, so I'm trying to, I'm selling international property, but I'm working more for the buyer than the seller.
So you're like a buyer agent.
So so basically, we started in Cyprus. A developer at the Place in the Sun exhibition approached us, a lady called Dora Onofrio, who worked for Canica Developments, and she said to us, "Just to put your properties on your website. Just put your properties on our website." And we're like, "Okay, we'll give it a go." We didn't, clueless. We were young, I had a bit of marketing background from my Sky Sports stuff, and I stuck it on a property portal. In a few months, we sold 3 or 4 properties, and we'd earning 5% commission. It was like happy days, right? Might as well be selling £1 million property. So, and it went from there. And then part of my upbringing, we were, we had a small studio apartment on the French Riviera. My dad's had to sell that to pay for my mum's treatment. Which is important. We'll talk about that later. And on the back of that, I just decided one holiday to walk down the high street, knocked on Michael Zingraff's office door. They're now part of Christie's, and said, who are you promoting your properties through in the UK? Right. And they said, nobody. So I said, well, let us do it. And we literally got a portfolio worth 500 million.
And who was us?
Overnight.
What were you trading as?
We were called Unique Living.
Okay.
Yeah. So that grew, and then basically I had probably 9 members of staff, and then the financial crisis 2008 to 9 to 12 or whatever it was. It went very quickly, and it was very painful. I remember that. We nearly lost it all, and obviously I had to pay to adapt my house.
Yeah.
So there was money that had to come out of the business in order to do that, and local authority were helpful with that, but at the same time we still need to top it up, and they gave us a loan that we had to pay back if we ever sold the house, etc., etc. So there was still a lot of pressure on me to sort of deliver.
Provide. Yeah.
And at some point I had to sort of downsize. There was no choice. Competition out there was fierce. You had big corporates really pushing their brand names rather than people working
of volume had come out the market. So people not listing because of the financial crisis.
Yeah.
Mismatch between seller expectation, buyer expectation. So what happened then? How did you get through that? So, I mean, presumably then things start to pick up those.
One deal got me through it.
One deal?
One deal.
Right. What was that?
It was a sale in the French Riviera. I think it was in Mougins. It probably brought us in around 25-30 grand at the time. Yeah. But literally it was being delayed, and finally it came through.
So it completed, you get paid.
You get paid, and then, by that point I'd had to sort of literally, I also took out a huge mortgage on my house at the time. I think the rate was at 5%, because I think it did go that high at one point. And I was paying like $2,500 a month on my mortgage. I had to get that loaned out. So literally it just gave me that respite. But I just remember sort of saying, am I actually working, or am I feeling sorry for myself here? Am I just sort of in this sort of like, oh, poor me situation? Yeah. Or was I just, should I just step forward? And I just started to sort of deal with clients myself. And I found that I had a good ability to sort of relate to people. And, I think 2015 around that time was one of my best years. I think I closed. I think we turned over around 500,000-600,000. It was a bounce back.
But do you think some of that, and I know obviously what happens 2 years later in terms of Maddie losing her life.
Yeah.
Up to that point, though, do you think that what had happened previously, though, had made you much stronger, much more resilient?
Not at the time.
Okay.
Didn't have time to think about it. I think I was going downhill quickly mentally, and it needed something needed to crack. I then sold sold my most expensive property in 2017, which was in Saint-Jean-Cap-Ferrat for 18.5 million. I might as well earn fees at the equivalent of a property for 1 million by the time all the French agents got involved.
Oh, really? What, because of your car?
Because this is where collaboration comes into it. But there was literally gardeners. There's an ongoing joke in the French Riviera that there's always a gardener that
gets paid out
because
because of a referral. Really?
So these are the richest fucking gardeners in the world, right?
Wow. Because they know a gardener that knows someone that knows
who knows this person and that person.
Yeah.
It's basically a brown paper bag, ultimately. Yeah. I mean, those days had sort of gone by that point, 2015, going into Swiss Bank and that sort of thing, But long things had changed dramatically. And I just I started falling in love, out of love with what I was doing, because you're promoting properties internationally for other agents who are in a specific country. Back in 2002, they needed someone like us because the domains were either .co.uk, .fr. They all of a sudden you become .com. And they're thinking, well, we don't need him. He's just a middleman.
Yeah.
So we found that harder and harder and harder. But at the same time, people were getting greedier and greedier and greedier. So from my perspective, I knew that something had to change, but I was now stuck in this sort of rut, I suppose, of the business that was sort of ongoing.
So how does that lead to you and Daniel Daggers? And here's another thing before you answer that. Why won't he come on our podcast? Because I've met him. I've mentioned it to him. Daniel, I'm
he
sure
sent
you're
me a
watching
note
this.
saying, just message my PA.
Listen,
And I've messaged his PA several times. He won't come on. See, we don't bite. So what is it about Daniel Daggers that
What I will say is,
now
now he knows I've been on, he'll come on.
Yeah. So how do you
if
get
I
involved?
turned around to him the other day and said, I'm going on to this podcast, he'd go, no, you're not, I'm going on.
Yeah, well, look, there's an open invitation to Daniel. So how did you get involved with Daniel Daggers?
So my daughter passed away suddenly in 2017, and I think that's where it started.
Right.
That was the moment. So we woke up one morning in October 2017. She had a bedroom downstairs. I was meant to be playing football on the Sunday morning. Game was called off for whatever reason, and I just heard this scream from downstairs. Run downstairs, and Maddie's there, motionless in her bed, staring into space. And I just went into automatic pilot. 999 on the phone. You need to resuscitate her, pick her a lifeless body up, put her on the floor, have to beat her chest and try and bring her back to life. Helicopter arrives at the house, police, ambulances, crime scene, and they resuscitate her. And someone turns around and says, "You resuscitated her. What? Thanks. You're amazing." And I'm like, "What have I resuscitated? She's been, my instant reaction is she's got brain damage on her brain damage. Was she ever meant to be? This is like everyone's saying like, what the, this has got to stop."
So but this is instant. You're remarkably philosophical about that, and this is in the moment, right?
Yeah. I just.
Because it had been a long time coming.
Yeah.
You prepared for the moment.
No, we never knew it was going to happen.
Right.
We were just planning her secondary education at the time. She was 10 years old.
Right.
Nothing prepares you for that. But in a way, you probably find your mind thinking about these scenarios. Not that you ever want that to happen.
Subconsciously, yeah.
Someone always says to me, "Would you ever change Maddie?" And I say, "No. She was what she was. She was incredible.
And you loved her no matter what."
Yeah, and she would use eye gaze to communicate, which was like looking at a computer screen, and she was starting to play games on her computer, and she'd have these sort of we had an amazing, this sort of bond, this connection. And it was taken away from me. But it was that defining moment in my life. That's happened for a reason, not just a season. That Maddie's life was there to make me a better person. I believe that.
So you flicked a switch pretty quickly in terms of how that
No,
was then...
it's well, I suppose, yeah, a year, it is pretty quick.
Yeah.
But it took me until 2018, mid 2018, to realize that I wasn't meant to be with my then wife. And we decided to separate amicably. We still had, 2 other girls who I love dearly. But this is the whole point, and this is where the grief journey starts, because the grief journey starts at a life-altering event.
Yeah.
So Maddie being diagnosed, my mum being diagnosed, my mum dying, that's a grief. These are all different forms of grief. Me divorcing my family, grief, because I'm losing my 2 other children to a sort of, in a divorced dad scenario, grief that you're then getting divorced, even though it was the best thing that ever happened for both me and my ex-wife, it was still a form of grief. My newborn child, grief is profoundly deaf. There's levels of grief that you have to contend with, and everyone's grief is their own grief. No one can change that. No one can make that any different for anyone.
No, but are you saying that grief can be channeled? Are you saying that can be a catalyst to, acting, approaching life, behaving, if you like, in a more profound and energetic and successful and productive way? Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely.
And
I think empathy is the one thing that is missing from property to a certain degree. If you think of an estate agent, how many times does an estate agent turn around? One of those ones off the high street. I'm not talking about anyone else, but how many times they turn around and say, "How are you?" to a client. What's going on in your world? It's amazing what it uncovers. That word, that sentence, "How are you?" It's very short. It's very easy to use, but it's very powerful. And I find that you can open up, you can discover similarities, you can have relatable subjects.
So you think, so it's the connection that it enables you to want to have that then provides a kind of a substance, a foundation, a platform that then kind of enables you with that client, and I suppose the same applies to recruitment and all sorts of things, enables you then...
Strong relationships,
to do better as a consequence of that. I mean, it's almost, I suppose, but there's an authenticity to it. There's a trust to it that now we've got rid of all the crap, all the Instagram rubbish. I'm this, I'm that. Now we're on a basic human level. Now we can trust each other. Now let's do some business.
Well, that was the catalyst, I think, for me, and it was meeting Daniel, and
which was what, by chance, or
no, my now partner. Someone says to call it my current partner. Don't say that.
No. Well, this is not a podcast on YouTube.
My current partner, she'll laugh at it, it's fine. Went to school with Daniel.
Right.
So Daniel went to JFS in Northwest London, and my partner Lauren went to school with him. And I saw what he was doing. I saw what he was doing on Instagram, and I was inspired. But I was also envious. I had a lot of envy, and envy is a horrible thing to have. Yeah. So over the years, I've had opportunities to sell DDRE, to sell my old company, and the sort of opportunities like that. And I just didn't take those opportunities. But this opportunity came, and it came at my lowest point. I'd hit rock bottom. I remember being in therapy, and it was the first time I cried probably since Maddie had passed. And I literally, I remember it was the Queen's birthday, the Queen's, fucking hell, can we cut that? It was the Queen's funeral. It was the day of the Queen's funeral, and we were watching it. It was like everyone, the whole country was watching it, let's face it. And I just literally Lauren's like, why are you crying at this? It's like, well, I'm not.
Because it triggers everything.
pent up.
It just all
It
came
brought it
up,
home.
Yeah.
and I literally went into this sort of almost like comatose state. I couldn't, and I knew something had to change.
And that was the point.
And my therapist at the time sort of pinpointed it, and he said, "You've got to get out of that. You've left your wife, but you've still got, the house is still yours, and or you're still living in that house, even though you're not living in the house."
But you had so there was no absolute closure. So that's kind of what
Never closed.
Yeah, what you needed. And Daniel then was the opportunity, the catalyst.
Yeah.
To then draw a proper line.
Well,
and move on.
we as I said,
We're giving Daniel far too much credit.
I know
here.
what as I said all the time. He had me at collaboration.
Yeah. And how's it
Because-
worked out? I mean, how long have you been with Daniel now then?
2 years.
2 years. And how is it versus what you thought it was going to be or what was sold to you by Daniel?
Daniel didn't sell it to me. We just agreed.
Right.
As I said, collaboration is what this industry is built on. Whether not so much in the UK.
I'm going to say internationally, not so much here.
Yeah, I was going to say,
Yeah.
but internationally they abuse it.
Yeah.
And I saw the nuances in the industry. I know what the problems are, and I also know what people aren't doing. And the one thing that came to the fore for me was being able to do this, being able to speak and give your view, give your expertise, give your opinion. And if someone wants to combat that, come back. Go on social media. Don't hide behind a trolling comment or whatever.
Anonymity, as many do. On Property Industry Eye in particular, as I found. Yeah.
But that's I mean, and it just grew. It just grew, and the confidence grew. And Daniel, I say it to all the new people who are joining DDRE, and many people are leaving the big corporates now to join the revolution.
And do you think much of your success has come from social media then? Your Instagram kind of success?
Or is it still referral recommendation?
Okay, so the DDRE as a brand gives me the strength I never had having my own boutique agency, because it carries a level of, kudos, I suppose. I look at you, you're working under DDRE, but ultimately it's about what you see behind. It's my name, and it's about my brand. Daniel gives us the ability to be who we want to be. Within reason. If we're representing the brand, then it has to be done a certain way, and which we respect it. But ultimately, I get the chance to be who I want to be. And if I want to bring grief into the property sector, I'm allowed to do that.
Yeah.
It's me at the end of the day. When we launch a property, it's done with the DDRE logo. If we're being quoted under DDRE, we have to do it through the PR agency and stuff like that. So everything is managed and controlled in the right way.
So it's the best of both worlds. Yeah. Best of your personal brand, and the best of your personality.
I have my own business. Yeah. I still have my own business.
I
still work independently.
Of Daniel Daggers, who's obviously, he's not unwell known, is he?
And Serge, how are you?
How am I? Thanks for asking.
Well, he's laughing a lot. I think you're all right.
That's nervous laughter. How am I? I'm in probably the best place I've been for a long time. And I think that came on the back of, shortly after Maddie passed away, I took up some DJing as a sort of pastime. Some people call it a midlife crisis.
I've had a few of those.
Yeah. So I was basically around, and I would do house parties because I wanted to keep it property related, right? So,
only in the south of France, Tuscany.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's the ambition. Yeah. Maybe a housewarming in Ibiza. That would be the dream. But someone said to me, I was at an event and there was a videographer there, and his name is Lee. And after the event, Lee turned around to me and we were at another venue and just chatting, and he said, "I saw this tattoo on your inner arm," and the tattoo read Maddie May in Hebrew. And he asked me what it said, and I said Maddie May, and he goes, "Right, okay." Took off his jumper, and he had a tattoo on his inner arm saying Madeline, and he'd lost his daughter, 17 years older, also called Madeline.
Wow.
And we just looked at each other and just hugged each other. And we knew instantly.
What are the chances?
What are the chances? But we knew instantly that we were going to do this podcast, and we were going to call it Men Do Talk, because we just realized we were talking a lot about shit, grief, and all the bollocks that men have to put up with today. All the stuff we were putting up with all those years ago. You know,
So
my mate's calling me the camel because I was slapping everything all the time.
It was an outlet.
It was an outlet. And we got an amazing sort of following from it. And a bit like you guys.
Well, mate, you've had a journey and a half.
You know, I thought I'd be sitting here talking about, so who's the most famous person you've sold a house for, bought for, etc., etc.
I'm not allowed to tell you.
But that is irrelevant to the quality of the conversation we've had today, Serge. So thank you for being so open.
And the fact that you are another demonstration of how you can come out the other side of challenge, grief, and so on. So look, kudos to you.
I just want to say one thing, and that is that whoever you are, I do believe that you have an ability to speak your voice. And social media is a very powerful tool and used in the right way. And as I say to everyone in the office, all the new people, how you perceive yourself is not how others perceive you. So be you.
Yeah.
Be real.
Be authentic.
Be real.
Yeah.
Build trust. On that note, incredible.
So,
Russell?
thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Honestly. No, it's been very enlightening. I have to say the quality of the guests that we're getting now, whether we find you or you come to us, the quality in the stories are just increasing, I think, in terms of hopefully what they're doing for people that watch this podcast in terms of the, the advice in some way, and certainly the stories that many people seem to find comforting and inspirational.
Well, episodes 1 to 30, I think, have helped a lot of people. Episodes 31 to 34 are going to help even more. So, Serge Cowan, thank you so much for coming on today. Thank you for being so open. Russell, as always, thank you for guiding us through this podcast journey. It just leaves me to say it's good night from me.
And it's good night from him.